Welcome to the Los Angeles Sentinel Daily Brief. This is where we talk Black and talk back to the headlines that are impacting the Black experience. I'm Niele Anderson, and here's what you need to know. Joining us today is Kevin Powell, acclaimed author, activist, original reality star, and he's a curator of the hip-hop experience. He's here to discuss his new book entitled Grocery Shopping with My Mother. Welcome, Kevin Powell.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you.
I'm glad that you are here. Now, my first experience with reality TV was The Real World.
First season, New York City, 1990s, yeah, back in the day.
Right, and first experience to see somebody who was unapologetically Black in a time where that wasn't even a term.
I remember thinking to myself, if I got on the show, maybe I could book some college gigs to speak and whatnot. Because I actually went to college with Beverly Bond from Black Girls Rock. I went to college with Bill Bellamy, the comedian, and I went to college with Sister Souljah. I was very close to her. She was getting a lot of, every time she was on TV, she would get an opportunity to speak at a college. I was like, I can make a little bit of money because I was a young writer at that time. Mm-hmm. And I auditioned, and I was shocked that I got picked. But what I remember, because I had been in college on the East Coast, Rutgers University, I was like, I'm not going to go in there shuffling job. I'm not going to do the stereotypical thing. I didn't know that I was going to say stuff about racism that would become part of our cultural history, but I just was like, I got to be my authentic self.
It was a great show, great time, and pretty much opened the pathway for reality TV.
I want the Kardashian money, though.
I heard that.
Word.
Well, let's talk about this new book, Grocery Shopping with My Mother.
Yes.
Talk to us about this book and what inspired it.
This is my 15th book, which is a blessing. Some people know out there that I was a young writer at Vibe magazine that Quincy Jones started back in the 90s, and I got to do a lot of great things, like interviews with Tupac Shakur and the whole Death Row Clan and other folks. But I was a poet also, and I was very much involved in the poetry scene in New York City, and I actually was connected to a lot of folks here at the World Stage in LA even back then. And I came back to poetry because my mom got sick a couple years ago, and I had to take care of her, take her to the grocery store. She's better now, thankfully she's still with us, but in taking her to the grocery store, I started doing social media posts, grocery shop my mother, and little did I know, people were responding to it because there were folks who were saying things to me like, well, I lost my mom, I lost my dad, or don't take this for granted, that kind of stuff. This is important what you're doing. And it just grew and grew. And as you know, in the country, we've lived through the Trump years. We lived through a lot of craziness, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. So all of that has found its way into this poetry book. But it starts with my mom and just kind of grew from there. So I kind of call it a poetic autobiography, if that makes sense.
It does. Did you learn anything from the book while you were writing it?
That writing poetry is hard. I wrote a lot of poems on the fly. Like when Cicely Tyson died, I wrote a poem real fast. When Sidney Poitier died, I wrote a poem real fast. So I realized I could write some poetry fast, but sometimes writing in the bathroom, in the backseat of a cab or Uber or whatever. I realized how much I miss poetry. You know what I mean? Like I've been blessed I've written cover stories for all kinds of magazines. I really, really love poetry. And when you mentioned Post and Beam, it was you were there. It's a full house. I was like, they're here for a poetry book. This is humbling. You know what I mean? It was, and the music was good. And next time I got to eat the food though, because I had a little bit of the vegan crab cakes, but I just saw everybody else. Even Malik ate. Malik ate well.
It was delicious. I'm a big fan of Post and Beam.
Shout out to Post and Beam. You know what I'm saying? Black-owned restaurant. Got to support them.
Has your mother read the book?
No, because I've been on the road. We were here in LA now. We had a big celebration in New York, and when I get back to the East Coast, my mother still lives in New Jersey, where I was born and raised. But I live in Brooklyn, obviously. I'm in New York. I'm going to take a copy of the book. She's funny though, because my partner, shout out to my partner, took the cover of the book, the photo of the book, and my mother's like, we just showed her a picture, and she was like, "Who's that on the cover with you?" I was like, "That's you, Mom." But, I would not be a writer if it wasn't for my mother, because she gave me a love of words and reading as a child. She took me to the library when I was 8 years old. I fell in love with books, and she's the first storyteller I ever met. So I definitely, and an appreciation for language and how we speak. You were talking about it in your background with Grambling, how you went to school and you met Black folks from all over the country. I mean, that's how I feel. Folks from Virginia, from California, from New York, we all have unique cultures, and I value that, and I try to bring that into my writing as a poet.
I love that.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to talk to you about a couple of the poems that I ran across. And I want to talk about the inspiration behind them.
Absolutely.
Kobe Bryant.
Like a lot of black males in this country, I was devastated when Kobe died. I was still a massive fan of Kobe. I still go on YouTube and watch clips of him, not just before playing, but also clips of him speaking. You know, because as he got older and matured, he became a force and just in inspiring people. I actually was at the Staples Center for the memorial in February 20th. You were there too. Wow!
You got your Kobe pen?
I got
your KB.
I got
your
it.
T-shirt?
I'll do even better than that.
Oh, I have the T-shirt too.
I still got my Kobe T-shirt.
Okay.
I happen to wear it today. I just wanted to honor him. You know what I mean? And I do believe that basketball is like an African ballet. That's what I refer to him as in the poem. And what I remember being there that day at Staples Center, you had people of all races, all generations out there, and I just wanted to write a piece that really paid homage to him and what he represented to so many people. And what I plan on doing with that poem that's in the poetry book is actually make it into an animated short. Remember when he won the Oscar for his poem, Dear Basketball? That's why my poem was titled Dear Kobe, because I want to make an animated film in tribute to him.
All right, next poem, Tupac and Biggie.
I knew both of them very, very well. Man, I was in Vegas when Pac died. Obviously, I did 3 cover stories on Tupac for Vibe magazine, including the famous prison interview. A lot of folks will remember the Live from Death Row cover story where Suge, Dre, Tupac, and Snoop on the cover. I was actually on the set of the California Love video. I came out here, got off the plane, went straight to the California Love video. Little did I know at that time there was a 3 or 4-year-old boy named Kendrick Lamar who was actually on that set as well, which is crazy. And I just wrote about Kendrick's new album, which I love for.
Oh, I'm crazy about that record.
I wrote about it. People can go to complex.com. I wrote a piece about it. I got word from Kendrick and his people. They loved the article, because I really wanted to kind of write something once about him. Because I think he's, to me, the most significant hip-hop artist that we've had in the last 10, 15 years. You know what I'm saying?
I agree.
But Tupac and Biggie, they were friends. And then all this craziness happened. And I was in Vegas when Pac died. I was actually home in Brooklyn when I got the call that Biggie had been killed out here. And I literally, after Biggie died, I couldn't even go to the funeral. It was in Brooklyn. It was like, there was all this energy about Biggie's funerals coming through Brooklyn. I was just depressed for a long time. And so I wanted to write a poem, Tupac and Biggie, that paid homage to both of them, but also just why it's so crazy for us as black folks, black men specifically, to be killing each other. We've literally, in the last few years, we've lost like 100 rappers, you know what I mean? Right. And so it's just still the ongoing thing of are we going to have black self-love or black self-hatred? And, what happened to Nipsey, who I referenced in the Kobe poem. It's like we got to stop killing each other. I'm not going to sit here and lie and say at some point in my life I wasn't violent, because I was taught, like, this is what it is to be a man. And, you got to be physical and all that stuff. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, men need to know how to express themselves without resorting to violence and taking each other out or creating a climate that can encourage us being violent toward each other,
And that's kind of one of the reasons why we started Black Men's Month in June. Why not celebrate Black men every day in the month of June, uplift them, and talk about the positivity that you guys enhance and how you enhance our communities instead of the negative narrative all the time.
I'm so glad you said that, because our film is called When We Free the World. And what's dope about it is we have an all-black male soundtrack. People like Raheem DeVaughn is on there, a lot of new rappers and singers on there, Bilal's on there. But we also have, like I grew up without a father, and I have a poem in there that's a forgiveness poem to my father finally after all these years. But we also make sure that we have black fathers represented in this film, because this narrative that there's no black fathers is a lie, you know what I mean? And this narrative that there's only certain types of black males is a lie. We have all kinds of black male expression in there, literally boys and men from age 10 to 90 something. And it's a really deep dive into like, what is a man, and we ask hard questions, but people are honest and vulnerable. And I can't wait till folks see this thing. But I agree with you. It's like, let's show us as whole human beings, and let's lift us up. Because also, I mean, I'm a lifelong hip hop head, obviously, but it's like, I also listen to jazz, listen to blues, I listen to classical, listen to rock and roll. I'm a big Nirvana fan, all that kind of stuff. I'm like, why can't we show the diversity of the experiences of black manhood as opposed to this like one-dimensional thing?
So we're talking a little bit about hip hop. Hip hop turns 50 next year.
Isn't that crazy?
But I want to get some comments for you about your thoughts on the state of hip-hop today, and a comment made by 21 Savage.
Which comment?
Okay, let's start with the first one. Nas is not relevant. What were your thoughts?
It would be like, somebody who's a jazz head saying, oh, Duke Ellington's not relevant. Quincy Jones ain't relevant. Billie Holiday, she's whack. You have to pay respect to people who came before you. I mean, you notice, here it is again. I came into the LA Sentinel office. I'm a journalist who came up in black newspapers like the Amsterdam News on the East Coast, City Sun, Afro-American newspaper. So I'm coming in here respectfully because I understand the legacy of this newspaper, because I understand history and what this newspaper means to this community. But when you're disconnected from that history, you're going to say crazy stuff like Nas is not relevant. Meanwhile, with my partners from San Diego, where she grew up at, we saw Nas perform, was it last summer, with a symphony orchestra in San Diego, and he destroyed it. I don't know how many rappers could do that, you know what I mean? Or who actually have the body of work. Because the lifespan of most rappers is like 2 albums. That's it, you know what I mean?
It was like a single nowadays.
Word.
I'm sorry.
So part of what hip-hop at 50 needs to be is people recognizing there's a whole hip-hop culture, and there's multiple generations there, and like you don't have to diss people. Like I would never diss young rappers. I don't do. People always like, especially. I mean, those of us who came of age in the '90s, some of us are starting to become our parents and acting like our parents. Like, yo, this stuff is whack. That's just because you don't like mumble rap, whatever. It's like I'm not going to diss it. Years ago, when 50 Cent first came out in the 2000s, I was speaking at Rikers Island, the infamous prison where I did an interview with Tupac back in the day. And I said something that I shouldn't have said. I said, I don't really like 50 Cent. Man, them brothers in that front, they booed. But when I realized, Kev, 50 is their era. And he means something to them. And this is someone who also survived getting shot. And so he was like a superhero to them. And guess what, Kev? Probably a lot of them are just like you. They didn't grow up with father figures. So these rap icons, just like Kobe is a basketball icon, mean something to them. So my hope is that part of Hip Hop at 50 will be a introduction to hip-hop conversations and hip-hop history that needs to be shared with younger heads. And then also the older heads are willing to listen to some of the younger heads. What I say to people, let's make a distinction. Here's hip-hop culture. It's the DJ, MC, graffiti writing, the dance element, the fifth element of hip-hop is knowledge. And then it's the industry. You and I both, you worked in radio, I worked at Vibe magazine. That's the industry. And I think we need to make people understand that both these things and understand where this came from. And even though I'm an East Coast person, I'm a New York cat, I have enough sense to say, listen, when I was a kid coming of age in the 70s, I realize now when I watch Soul Train reruns, they were doing hip-hop dances in the 70s on Soul Train. So, hip-hop may have started in the Bronx, African Americans, West Indians, Latinx folks, but there was also a parallel energy happening as early as the 70s in California as well. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just like, how can I diss that? I have to acknowledge this was happening. And one of the people who hit me to that years ago, I've interviewed a lot of major rappers, but I remember I interviewed Ice-T. And what people don't realize, Ice-T was born on the East Coast, and just like the Will Smith character on The Fresh Prince, he came out to California. So he was actually a dancer in the 70s before he went to the military. Then he came back out. He became the OG Ice-T that we actually knew.
Before I let you go, I want to do a top 5 with you. I'm going to just say a name or a word, and you just give me your thoughts.
Okay.
Tupac.
My next book is a biography of Tupac Shakur that people have been asking me to write, or waiting for me to write since he died. And it's going to be done next year. It'll be out in 2024 finally. And it's going to be a deep dive. When I met Pac in Atlanta, it'll be 30 years ago, 1993. I met him. It's funny how you introduced me, because I was nervous to go introduce myself to him because I was a fan of his because of his music. Juice, obviously, his first performance, but I thought he killed. Pac had watched The Real World. So he was a fan of mine.
We all watched The Real World.
I had no idea. Remember, there's no social media back then. So I didn't know y'all was watching it.
Yeah, we was watching.
And we was definitely not getting Kardashian money. I just want to throw that out there again. But that's how it started with us. And so Pac is my brother for life, no matter what. And that was one of the saddest days of my life when I was in Vegas. I was actually sitting in my hotel room because I didn't know what to do, because it was, he lived for 7 days. I was actually watching Denzel Washington for the 50th time, probably, playing Malcolm X. And literally when Denzel Washington's character, Malcolm X, is going to the Audubon Ballroom, and we know what happened, that Malcolm got assassinated, I got the call, Pac just died, we got to get to the hospital.
Wow.
It was a deep day, man. I'll never forget that day. So, but rest in peace, Pac, rest in peace, Afeni, his mother, and much respect to his sister, Cetra, who's actually living in New Orleans now, living in Louisiana. Yeah, last time I checked, yeah.
Wow. Okay, next name, Jay-Z.
Jigga, Brooklyn all day, son. Brooklyn all day. I mean, I'm a big Jay-Z fan. Just his rhymes. I mean, but also what I admire about what Jay and Dame Dash did was, he got rejected by mad labels. People don't realize Jay didn't really get put on until he was like 25, 26, which was kind of older back then. It's still kind of older for rappers. Most rappers are teenagers, early 20s, but they start their own record label, Rockefeller, and we know the rest is history. You know what I'm saying? So Jay is just a masterful rapper. I mean, of course, I think that Jay is a descendant of Biggie, and before that, my favorite rapper ever out of Brooklyn, Big Daddy Kane. So it's like a through line, Big Daddy Kane, Notorious B.I.G., and Jay, but Jay's just a masterful wordplayist, is how they call him. Yeah.
Kendrick Lamar.
Oh my God, K. Dot. Man, he's just different. You know what I mean? And it's like Kendrick did on this album. What we're doing with the black male film that's coming. Like, let me just open my soul up. Let me just be honest about everything. And I really appreciate it. In a lot of ways, I feel like the album was not just a hip hop album. It's like it was a spoken word album. It's like a meditation. It's like church. Right. It's like therapy.
He got a few amens from me.
Word.
What's your favorite song on the double CD or whatever they're calling it now?
Wow, that's a great question.
Mine is Savior. I love Savior.
Savior's a great song.
I love that one. Count Me Out. Love it.
You really listen to this joint.
I know, from top to bottom. Yeah. I even love the one, I forget the name of it, when he's going at it with the girl.
When they argue with that's the actress, the comedians. Yeah, that was funny.
I mean, that is black love in the hood all day.
That was black love in the hood. That was Instagram, y'all.
Purple Hearts, love it from top to bottom.
Word. I appreciate him, and he doesn't realize it, and I'll say it here. He helped me to think about how I write going forward, because I'm like, and that's what art should do, is you should inspire people. I'm sure you've been inspired by folks who you've listened to their music scene and feel like, I want to do this with my career in this kind of way. And I was like, this is dope, man.
Right, yeah. He even helped me with my daddy issues, because I was raised without my father too. So I mean, he just spoke on a lot of things. Like you said, it's church, it's love, it's life, it's career. Yeah. He hit on everything.
Yeah, I loved it.
2 more words left. Reality TV.
Donald Trump. Nah, I mean, you know what? When we did we did Real World Reunion episodes.
I watched it.
Yeah, and I mean, it was deep for me, because I never thought I would have people say to me all these years later, you were right. I had a lot of people hit me up on social media saying, I watched you and I apologize for what I may have thought about you. I'm talking about mostly white folks, for real. I mean, imagine a black person getting apologized to, but it was in the aftermath of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, all that stuff that's happened the last couple of years. But, I also learned how many of our people watched the show, which really touched my heart, and said you were representing for us, we had never seen someone like you. And the things that people remember, some people were like 7, 8 years old, some people were 12, 13 years old, or they may have been teenagers or even college students, but like, racism is race plus power. I can't tell you how many people said that. It's like, Kat, when you said that, you gave me my definition of racism. I was a student rebel in college. That's where I got it from. I was just like, black people can't racist. Racism is about power. Right. Little did I know, but it shows that, you've worked in popular culture, the power of media and how we use the platform is really, really important. Is it going to be for something that's going to uplift people, or is it going to hurt people? So I think about that more than ever. I didn't realize the power that we had. I'll tell you a quick funny story since we're talking about hip-hop history. When The Real World hit, the show was like, they told us not to go to malls. You're going to have people chasing you down the street. I was like, that's not going to happen. 2 things happened. One, they brought us out to L.A. to the Video Music Awards for MTV back then. And this is the year of Michael Jackson, Howard Stern, Nirvana, Red Hot Chili Peppers. It was like mad famous people there. The 7 of us showed up at the VMAs, and these fans were screaming for us like we were like Michael, like the Jacksons or the Beatles or something. We're like, yo, this is crazy. And then the MTV people gave us like some, what is it called, Hershey's Kisses. They're like, throw this to your fans. We're like, for real? These people lost their minds. I was like, for real? We were like, yo. And then the second time, the other incident that happened was, I was, do you remember the Mondrian Hotel? It used to be on Sunset down in West LA. I was standing out there with James Bernard, who used to be the editor-in-chief of the Source magazine, and LL Cool J. LL Cool J. Just think about that for LL Cool J.
Ladies love.
A group of women walked by, and I'm thinking, like, I'm like this little skinny dude. They're going to scream for LL. They scream for me. Kevin. I'm embarrassed. I was like, word? And LL was like, man, you better go talk to your fans. I was like, he was seasoned at that point. I was like, okay.
He wasn't worried. He was like, you can have them.
I'm like, he's buff 200 pounds. I'm like 110 pounds. It was hilarious. That's when I realized this is a big deal. You know what I mean? So reality, and we couldn't have predicted. No one knew that this would become a dominant genre in TV. We didn't know, We didn't know branding, the things we talk about now, branding, marketing, product placement. It was none of that. It's just like, I had no idea, man. We had no idea. It's deep. It's deep what it's become. And it's a machine.
It is.
It's a machine, yeah. It's definitely influenced TikTok, Instagram, it's unreal because everyone films themselves now. And it's like, I remember when we were taping our season, like we'd be out on the streets in New York and people saw the cameras and like, what are y'all doing? I never knew. I couldn't have imagined people turning the cameras, literally turning these things on themselves and like, I'm just going to document stuff, you know? It's a phenomenon. It's a phenomenon. It literally shifted the culture. And it's deep to be a part of American cultural history. I mean, I'm part of hip hop history, I guess you could say, that I'm part of this TV history, reality TV history. Yeah, it's profound.
Last word. Well, not last question, last word.
Yeah.
Hip hop.
Making something out of nothing, winning on your own terms, for real. And since we're on the West Coast, I did a cover story on a brother named Calvin Broadus back in the day, Snoop D-O-double-G.
Okay.
And if you'd have told me back then when I wrote that cover story on Snoop, that Snoop would be all over product placement, branding, all kinds of stuff, got his own wine.
I mean, he's a spokesperson for Kim Kardashian's Skims now. Did you see that?
I saw that. I was like, because remember when I interviewed Snoop and did a cover story on him, he was on trial for murder. And he reinvented himself. He survived that. It's profound, but hip hop is winning on your own terms. And Snoop is one of those examples that I think of. Like, man, this man has had a career that has lasted 30 years. And the thing I'm proud of most with hip hop is that people said it was going to last. It was a fad. You know, that it was trash, it was garbage. And I'm like, nah, it's not trash. It's not garbage. This is our culture. And we got to remember that it was created by working class poor kids from inner cities like myself, you know, be it here on the West Coast, you know, on the East Coast, other parts of the country who were just trying to find their voices, you know. And people need to understand, too, like I saw a poster of Dr. King and his family when we were coming in here. Dr. King, at the end of his life, was telling us not to forget poor people. He had a poor people's campaign. Those same poor people created this culture called hip-hop that's now turning 50 years old. And it's the dominant culture all around the world.
Right, and some of those poor kids are now billionaires.
They're now billionaires. You know, and my 15 books, including Grocery Shopping with My Mother, my life as a journalist, my life as a speaker, all came because of the energy of hip-hop.
Wow.
Yeah.
Grocery Shopping with My Mother by Kevin Powell. It's a book of poems, a book of inspirations, and you'll definitely find your poem in this book. Go pick it up at Malik's Books, which is at the Baldwin Hills Mall, or you can go over to Fox Hills, known as Culver City Mall now, but we always call it Fox Hills. Thank you so much for joining us. This was such a great conversation to have.
Thank you for having me.
All right, happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you.
All right. For the latest in Black news, you want to visit lasentinel.net. I'm Niele Anderson, and you have just been debriefed.